they were coming up to me and saying, hey, who are you? Where'd you come from? Like I was some kind of ringer brought in from some other like powerhouse state. And I looked at them and I said, no, I've been here all along. Been here all along. Today I just decided I'm just going to freaking do good today. And after that, I got to tell you, my identity changed.
Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Aaron, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know. It's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy. It's comedy. It's definitely full on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck.
Hey guys, it's Erin here, and I'm super excited to bring you something new that we have been kicking around, both Nicole and I, as well as our team behind the scenes. And we're calling it Buck That. And Buck That is really just a simple concept, one story about a time when somebody bucked the norm and good things happened. And so it's not our normal interview. It's not our normal long format. These are shorter, 15 to 20 minutes, really centered around storytelling and a story of real success from bucking it or bucking the trend, and that we're calling Buck That. So first up, we're talking to Dan Blanchard, and he's an incredible storyteller. He's actually by day a special education teacher in the high school here in Connecticut, but he is also a best-selling and award-winning author, speaker, and TV host as well. And wow, what a story is all I have to say. So buckle up and get ready to buck that.
All my life, people have, stopped and looked at me and been like, wow, like, you're not from around here, are you? Or, what's that accent? I grew up in Connecticut. Never was in Boston. Always in Connecticut. And the people from Connecticut, even notice it. They're like, yo, you got like some kind of Boston accent. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know where it comes from, because they inquire. They're like, oh, did you live in Boston? Did you work in Boston? Were you in the military in Boston? Whatever. I'm like, no. I'm like, I've been in Connecticut my whole life. I got no idea where it came from. However, I do have a hypothesis, and not a lot of people know this about, but I was born deaf and mute. And my parents missed it. The medical experts missed it. My parents missed it. It was only found out because at some point they noticed it in my brother. And they were like, wait a minute. And they tapped at him. And it turned out my brother was, mostly deaf, and he wasn't speaking well at all. He somehow learned how to read lips a little bit, what I'm saying? But me, I didn't get that. So when they tested my brother and they were like, wow, holy cow, he's like, that's why he's like deaf or pretty much deaf. So they tested me and they were like, oh my goodness. I'm like, he's deaf too. So I was deaf, and, and my sister tells me, and I don't remember just because I was too young, but my sister tells me, she goes, Mom and Dad thought you were like mentally retarded. And that's why you were just making these animal noises. And, that's how it was back in those days, right? It was the mentally retarded making these animal noises, something wrong with them, blah, blah, blah. Well, when they got my brother tested and they tested me and they found out, they came back and they told my parents, they said, hey, we got good news, we got bad news. We can do an operation on both you boys and fix both of their ears, and they're going to hear, which is great. However, the younger boy, he's missed his pretty much his like milestones, his developmental milestones. And he's never going to speak. He's just going to make animal noises the rest of his life. That must have been a pretty tough pill, for my parents to swallow. And I got to tell you, my mom and my grandma refused to swallow that pill. And I don't know where they found her, but they found this little old nut. And I've got like this vague memories. And I don't know if it was 5 times a week or 2 times a week. I don't know. It's just a vague memories of me, my mom and my grandma throwing me in an old beat up car, and I remember it was blue, and taking me to this little old nun. And this little old nun, she worked her magic, and I was able to talk. So I share this story like with my friends, and it was coming out more and more. And I was getting older and older, sort of like as a young man, and my friends would start laughing. They'd say, "Wait a minute, so you're telling us some little old nun, got you to talk?" And I was like, "Yes, never supposed to talk ever." And they were like, "Well, she must have been an Italian nun from Boston." Because I kind of use my hands a lot, and I just don't seem to pronounce that R. So, come on, let's go get in the car and go to the bar. It's definitely the Boston accent, or who knows? I've been accused of a lot of accents. And I don't know if that little old nun, if she was like Italian from Boston or not. But you know what? If she was, God bless her. If she wasn't, God bless her. If that little old nun worked magic and got me to talk, all these years later, my wife is like, you talk too much, like you won't shut up, and she might be right because as you can hear it, now I kind of got a little bit of that raspy voice now, but maybe talking too much from the little boy that was never supposed to talk to the man now who's a school teacher, talks all day long, coaches sports, yells and talks all night, afternoon, and night long, and who's a professional speaker. It's my job is to professionally speak. The little boy was never supposed to talk. Over the years, there's been some people that have approached me and they've said, "Hey, you kind of talk funny." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's just got that accent, and some of them have been very meaning, and they're like, "Dan, you can't just keep talking like that. No hard thing, that Boston accent." And I have trouble too, put out for my G. I say meeting, let's go to the meeting. We have a meeting today. Hopefully we won't get a beating at the meeting. I'm saying? So I just can't seem to say the dang R or that dang G, but either one. So, but there's been some people over the years, very well-meaning people who've been like, "Dan, you got to study like the Midwestern newscasters. Those guys, they've got the accent, the American accent that you want to study." And to me, I was like, "Oh man, life is hard enough without having to like try to learn to speak differently in a different accent." To me, it just didn't feel right. Like, why? Why would I try to speak like somebody else? I don't want to speak like somebody else. I want to speak like me. And if someone doesn't like it, I mean, oh wow, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but oh, well, this is who I am. This is the authentic me. And over the years, it's come back a few times. And it was probably just recently after I did my TEDx talk last May, and it probably came out over the summer. Again, I had a woman who I've known for years contact me. She's like, "Dan, this is a bunch of years later. You still haven't fixed that accent. You still talk funny." And she's like, "You're holding yourself back. I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to help you. Go out there and study these people and speak like them." And I'm like, "Hey, thanks. I really appreciate help, but no thanks. I mean, this is me. So this is who I am. I don't want to talk like nobody else." And to be truthful, I mean, I grew up in the '80s, in my formative years, and I got to watch like a lot of like Rocky Balboa movies. "Yo, Adrian," people told him his entire life, "You talk funny." Not only that, but they said, "You look funny too." Like, and he went out there looking funny and talking funny, and he made his best possible professional life looking funny and talking funny, just being himself. And another big one in the '80s that I used to follow, of course, the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all the balk. People told him the same thing when he was trying to reach for his dreams. They're like, "Dude, you freaking talk funny. You got to do this. You got to get into theater and study theater." He's like, I don't want to study Shakespeare. I just want to be Arnold. That's what I want to be. I want to be Arnold." You know what I'm saying? And damn, that was hitting the nail on the top of the head. He wanted to be who he was, Arnold. He didn't want to be Paul Newman or any of those other famous actors of the day. He wanted to be Arnold. What a good move that was. In Sly, Sylvester Stallone, he wanted to be Sly. Even though he looked funny and talked funny. You know what I'm saying? But what a good move that was. So I'm like, and I'm not trying to compare myself to those guys, but I'm just saying, if those guys can climb the ladder and make a career, a very successful career, of just being them, just being Sly and just being Arnold, why can't I just be Dan? I talk funny. I was never supposed to talk. I've got this accent. And you know what? That's Dan, and it's okay. When people ask me about, some of the greatest moments in my life, and there's the obvious ones, I'm saying, have the birthday of your child, getting married, all that stuff. But this one, I go to this one a lot because I feel that this one kind of started the ball rolling for me. I'm going all the way back to high school. I'm a high school wrestler, and I'm a little guy, 132-pound sophomore, right? Little guy. And I'm wrestling varsity. I actually made varsity as a freshman without a 26-pound weight class. And then my sophomore year, I had to continue to earn my spot winning wrestling. But I'm on varsity, I'm 32 pounds. So the season ends. And I had a pretty good season. I think fifth in the state, So I was like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty good for a little guy, a little sophomore, pretty good. But I was frustrated. I was very frustrated. I was like a natural at this, pretty good last year, pretty good this year. I'm like, but am I ever going to be great? And I was frustrated. I was like, oh gosh, I just want to be great. I want to be great at something. I'm great at nothing. I want to be great at something. And it was actually in my head, if only I could just get away from like my home, get away from the United States and go to the Soviet Union. They got some wrestling. Those guys are bad and tough, right? Those guys. Oh man, if I just spent a year wrestling at the Soviet Union, I would come back to the United States. I would be great at something and I would get adulation, praise, and love that I so desire. Right? Well, who was I kidding? I was going to the Soviet Union. None of this was happening. So I'm frustrated and I'm thinking, oh gosh, if only I could be great at something. And there it was. And I'm at the state tournament and there's some flyers on the table. And I look at the flyers and they say, the Junior Olympic Trials wrestling tournament to make the Junior Olympic wrestling team. And it was going to be at Central Connecticut State University, which was kind of down the road from my house. I was like, wow, I can't go to the Soviet Union, but I can go to Central Connecticut State University, right? So I grabbed the flyer, I run around, I talk to all my buddies. Hey, dude, we're going to this. We'll go into this. You know what I'm saying? And I talked to everybody, and every single one of them said the same thing. Dan, why the heck would we go to that just to get our butts kicked? So I was frustrated. I kept asking people, go with me, go with me. And they're like, oh, we'll get our butts kicked. I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. We'll get our butts kicked. We'll learn stuff and we'll get great. You know, Obviously none of them wanted to learn that way. So I got this flyer. I'm looking at this flyer for weeks going, well, I guess it's never going to happen. Not going to go to this tournament. Not going to be great at anything. My brother sees me looking at that flyer and he says, hey, you go to that thing or what? I'm like, I'm going to go to that thing. I'm going to go to that thing. I'm going to get my butt kicked. I'm going to learn a line. I'm going to freaking get going. Right? So my brother's like, have you been working out? Are you watching your weight? And I'm like, nope. And he's like, oh boy. So I enter it alone. None of my friends are with me. None of my family's with me. I enter it and step on the scale and I'm up 2 weight classes. Most people come down a weight class or 2. Right? I'm up 2 weight classes for the Junior Olympic trials. And I'm just like, oh boy, you know what? Who cares? And I get to say something magical happened that day. Nobody was there watching me. No friends, no family, nobody. Nobody was watching me. Thus, I felt like nobody was judging me. I entered a weight class, 2 weight classes up. Nobody that weight class knew me. And I didn't know any of them. So there was no expectations on how those matches were going to go. So I went out there, laced up my wrestling shoes, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just have some fun today. And a really weird thing happened, Aaron. All the fear just went away. It was just gone. It was like the only time in my life up to that point that I felt no fear. Just going to go out there, get my butt kicked a little bit, learn some stuff, and get better. It's a win-win. What more could I ask for? So I go out there in my first match, and I tear the guy up. And then my second match, I tear the guy up. I tack him out, right? But beating him by 15 points. So bad they stopped the match because I'm humiliating the other guy. Next guy, I pin him. Next thing I know, I got a whole bunch of people in my corner watching me wrestle, right? And I was just like, I had like fans everywhere. I was just like, what's going on here? It was really, I remember this one kid came up to me, he goes, "Oh, this next kid you got, he was in the finals, up 2 weight classes or whatever." And he goes, "I hate him. I'll pay your dollar to beat him." I was like, "Dude, I don't need your dollar. Just I got to go out there and wrestle, right?" And I tore him up. I was like, "I don't know what's happening today, but I'm riding this wave." And then my fourth match, my fifth match, my sixth, I beat every single one of them by a lot, to the point where after the match was over, they were coming up to me and saying, "Hey, hey, hey, who are you? Where'd you come from?" Like I was some kind of ringer brought in from some other like powerhouse state. And I said, and I looked at them and I said, "No, I've been here all along. Been here all along. Today I just decided I'm just gonna freaking do good today." And after that, I gotta tell you, my identity changed that day. My identity no longer said, "Dan, you're a pretty good wrestler." My identity said, "You are a great wrestler." There I was, Junior Olympic trials, and I won it all. Thinking I win it all, not by a little bit, by a lot. I'm on the Junior Olympic team, traveling around, wrestling like the best wrestlers, inside the United States and all that stuff. And I come back and I am a different person. I
Mm.
am a totally different person. When I come back, my junior year, tear it all up, state champ, senior year, all that undefeated, breaking all sorts of records, tear it up, state champ, getting recruited. I got recruited by a Division I top 20 college. I was in a magazine, one of the top recruits on the East Coast. And the funny thing is, I stopped wrestling after that year. Now I kept going. I would go up to New York and wrestle in the New York Athletic Club. And I'd wrestle world place winners, Olympic champs, bronze medalists, silver medalists, Pan Am champs, NCAA champs, place winners. I'd wrestle all those guys and I would hang. I would do well. Granted, they would beat me, by a little bit, but I would hang with them and do well. And it was just so gratifying and so fulfilling. And I bring it all back to that day when I bucked the trend, when everybody said, "What are you crazy? What are we crazy? We're not going to go there." So, I mean, I think the lesson I learned from that is, one, sometimes you got to do it alone.
Mm.
You got to buck the trend
Mm.
and do it. Sometimes you got to do that thing that makes your heart pound because you're scared, right? But you're also alive. Your heart pounding means you're alive. So sometimes you got to go do that thing you're afraid of. Sometimes you got to go do it alone. And then sometimes you just got to be willing to push the fear aside and say, "Hey, let's have a good time getting my butt kicked back." Because then you do that and life changes for you. So that's the event that it triggered everything. It took me a long time to figure this out, but I figured out, when I went to the army. And when I went to the army, what I did was I took the winning identity, the champion identity, who had those really great work habits, work ethic. And then I just transferred them over to the army and became like a model army infantry guy. And then after the army, I went to college. And now listen, in high school, I was nothing but a C student, but just something like clicked, the C student who just tried to stay eligible to wrestle in high school, play football in high school. Um, I was like, well, what if I took all those like wrestling positive habits that I transferred over to the army? What if I just continued it? I just transferred it over to the classroom in college. And the next thing you know, straight A's, dean's list, straight A's. And I just kept going and I just kept going with that same winning attitude on the wrestling mat and in those trenches and in the infantry. And next thing you know, I completed 14 years of college and earned 7 degrees. Again, this all started on that wrestling day, that tournament day. I just transferred over the habits now of being like a school teacher, a wrestling coach, a football coach, transferred them over to being an author, speaker, transfer them over to being a husband, transfer them over to being a father. You know what I'm saying? And now everything I took out of my life, I'm just continuing to transfer over. Those was success habits that all started that day in 10th grade when I decided to go to that tournament, when every one of them told me, "What are you crazy? Why, why would we go there just to get her butt kicked?" You know what I'm saying? So I bucked the trend. And just some really, really good things have gone out of it. I've just written my 40th book. And I've done the TEDx talk. I've talked on big stages. I've spoken on several of the world's top 10 podcasts.
And you
Yep,
drive 1 hour each way every day to teach special education students
I do.
and drive
And
back. It's just incredible.
and then I come home to my 5 kids and I coach their sports, their teams.
And you
So
still have time to give us your book that story on this podcast. Hey there, it's Erin. I'm just popping in real quick to ask you a question. Is there any chance you know someone who is looking for a keynote speaker for their upcoming event? Look, I know that many event organizers, they struggle to find a speaker who provides both tangible value and business knowledge, but that also lights their audience on fire. And I truly believe there aren't many speakers like me out there who are both former corporate executives and professionally trained speakers. And there's definitely none that roll in with an orange suitcase they unpack with their audience. Trust me on that. I would love nothing more than to bring my message of using authenticity as your strategic career and business advantage to people spinning in your universe, especially if you'd be there. I promise my talks always create an immediate buzz, but not just right after, but for months and years after the event is over. You can learn more about my message, style, and reviews, and share my speaking info by going to beauthenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. That's B, just the letter B, authenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. Or of course, we have it right in the show notes to make it easy for you too.